There can be no peace in the world until the military power of Japan is destroyed. If the Japanese insist on continuing resistance beyond the point of reason, their country will suffer the same destruction as Germany.
On August 6, 1945, President Harry S. Truman ordered the atomic bomb Little Boy to be dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The power of this singular atomic bomb resulted in an estimated death of between 65,000 to 80,000 Japanese citizens. This death toll rose notably above 100,000 as people died from radiation sickness. President Truman's decision to use the atomic bomb was motivated by a desire to save American lives, in hope of an immediate and unconditional surrender from Japan. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, another atomic bomb called the Fat Man was deployed on the city of Nagasaki. This bomb killed an estimated total of 80,000 people. Although many disagreed, these two bombs were the only choice for Truman to save more American lives. Despite the fact that Japan's defeat was forthcoming, the Japanese people were determined to protect their homeland.
World War I, the war to end all wars, brought great devastation to Europe, bringing the fall of great empires. Eventually, the German Empire arisen from the defeat of World War I to become a renewed military threat to Europe and the entire world. During this period, scientific efforts led to the discovery of nuclear fission in 1938. Anxiety that Germany might make an atomic weapon influenced the United States to also create an atomic weapon to counter the possibilities of Nazi scientists' unspeakable theoretical weapon. In 1939, World War II had just begun with the German invasion of Poland. This was also the year that the United States officially started experimentation to develop a nuclear weapon. For the next 2 years, the war raged on with Nazi Germany gaining more territory as they overran France. The Allies fought the U.S. public opinion overwhelmingly and rejected the idea of direct involvement in another European war. Therefore, they assisted the United Kingdom through the Lend-Lease program by providing the instruments of war. On September 27, 1940, Japan signed the Tripartite Act, with Germany and Italy entering into a military alliance known as the Axis. In response, the United States imposed economic sanctions impacting Japan's ability to wage war due to severe shortages of oil and other natural resources. Japan, who wanted to have Pacific dominant power, made the decision to attack the United States on December 12, 1941. The tension between the two nations accumulated in the Japanese Air Force launching a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, devastating the U.S. The single attack killed 2,403 people and officially entered the U.S. into World War II and started a Pacific War between Japan and the United States. In 1942, Robert Oppenheimer was to become the director of the Los Alamos Laboratory, which played a vital role in the development of the atomic bomb, selected by the director of the project, General Groves. Through the years, the Allies had pushed Germany and were slowly taking back France. While the Soviets were pushing through the East, the year of 1945, the Manhattan Project was drawing closer to rectifying its goal of creating an atomic bomb. This singular project took thousands of scientists and technicians to create and a massive government budget. In 1945, Franklin D. Roosevelt unexpectedly passed away, leaving Vice President Harry S. Truman with the devoting task of leading the Allies to victory.
This left Truman with a lot of responsibilities in his work of World War II. Truman also had to manage relations with U.S. allies. The scientists working on the Manhattan Project had made great progress by this point in scientific breakthroughs attempting to build the atomic bomb. In late April, with the alleged suicide of Adolf Hitler and his wife Eva Braun, Nazi Germany had fallen and Germany was defeated. Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson informed President Truman about the existence of the Manhattan Project. It was President Truman's solemn responsibility to decide if and when these new weapons were to be used. He considered many factors. Japanese were fighting for the emperor, who had convinced them it was better to die than surrender. Japanese women and children had been taught how to kill with basic weapons, and Japanese kamikaze pilots can turn planes into guided missiles. The Japanese suicides manipulated by the emperor served them well in unifying the nation for war, but now the unwillingness to accept defeat was a key factor in forming Truman's decision. The president established the Interim Committee, a top-secret high-level group based on supporting a decision to drop the atomic bomb. The group was headed by Secretary Stimson, who could debrief President Truman on their findings. Over the course of May and June of 1945, This committee worked on selecting appropriate targets, conditions, and variables necessary to authorize the mission. Since Germany was defeated, Japan became the U.S. top priority. Japan remained a threat. The interim committee worked on the use of the atomic bomb, and Truman had to weigh the options. An invasion of Japan would possibly result in the estimated number of casualties. With casualty figures from D-Day fresh on the public's conscience, Truman ruled this option out. Other options included waiting for Stalin and the Soviets to declare war. Distrust of Soviet intentions with newly conquered territory made this option appear unwise. Similarly, a blockade of Japan in the hope that they would surrender offered no guarantee of a swift end to the war. On July 16, 1945, the test of the atomic bomb took place in Jornada de Muerto, New Mexico. This test, named the Trinity Test, showed immense power in the atomic bomb. The effects were described by Major General Groves in a memorandum to Secretary Stimson. For a brief period, there was lightning effect within a 20-mile radius through several suns at midday. A huge ball of fire lasted for several seconds. When Harry Truman became aware of the success of the Manhattan Project, he was given a huge decision on his hands. Truman had to think of a solution to the ongoing war in the Pacific, and the option of unleashing one of the most terrible weapons known was the greatest one. This was his primary choice, as it was optimal for the U.S.'s situation and would save more lives and shorten the war. Although this decision was Truman's, the committee's purpose was to help support a rational option. With the knowledge that the Trinity test was successful, Truman and the Allies issued an ultimatum for Japan. We call upon the government of Japan to now proclaim the unconditional surrender of all Japanese armed forces. The alternative for Japan is prompt and utter destruction. This was the first compromise attempt from the United States. The targets were chosen, and Hiroshima was to be ground zero. It was selected because the other Japanese cities were bombed by conventional weapons so extensively that using the atomic bomb was little or no use. The U.S. wanted to achieve the greatest impact to shock Japan into a surrender. On August 6, 1945, without an adequate response to the U.S.'s ultimatum, Harry Truman ordered the atomic bomb, Little Boy, a uranium bomb, to be dropped on Hiroshima. The attack killed 80,000 people instantly and an additional 60,000 by radiation poisoning in the following few months. This single bomb was the most destructive weapon the world had ever seen. This bomb was used with the desire to effect the Japanese into surrender. This was the second attempt by Truman and the U.S. to force Japan into surrender. 3 days later, Truman ordered another bomb, Fat Man, to be dropped on the Japanese city of Nagasaki. This attack killed an estimated 70,000 people and flattened nearly the entire city. A day before, the Soviet Union entered the Pacific War by declaring war on Japan. Less than a week later, Japan surrendered unconditionally. On September 2, 1945, the Japanese formally surrendered to the Allies.
The bomb had brought World War II to an end despite the unfortunate outcomes of many Japanese citizens' deaths. Truman claims that this decision saved many more lives on both sides of the war. Had he authorized an invasion in the bombed Japanese cities, all necessities for human lives were gone, leaving survivors clinging to life and in need of dramatic intervention with no chance of survival. There were huge losses in the Japanese economy as the biggest war factories in Japan were destroyed. Japan, costing 65 million yen in projects economic activity, began the nuclear arms race between Russia and the United States, starting the Cold War. Although no physical fighting or casualties were faced in the Cold War, it lasted over 25 years, filled with proxy wars. Scientists also developed peaceful uses for nuclear technology, including the production of energy. The use of the atomic weapon also impacted the way society lives today, such as nuclear energy to provide power and much more dangerous weapons such as the hydrogen bomb. It also sets the motion of a chain of events where many nations have these weapons, increasing the potential of nuclear conflict.
The atomic bomb was the deadliest weapon ever known used by humans and changed the way nations approve of diplomacy and warfare. The decision was extremely deadly, but it was the most effective option that Harry S. Truman had to end the Pacific War. After years of conflict, Truman saw his duties to American armed forces to shorten the war and bring a quick resolution to the conflict in which the United States could recover from. The joint work of the billions of dollars into the Manhattan Project and the hundreds of thousands of people set in stone of how the war would change and affect the whole world for decades on.